Hey, fans, what's good? You are now rocking with the best. You see us on the screen. It is Believe in Cowboys presented by FanDuel. Ro Parrish along with Jesse Holly getting you right and ready for the third. Just call it a playoff game. It is what it is. Dallas Cowboys visiting Detroit Lions trending in opposite directions. Just you know how it goes on this show. You, my friend, have the opening statement. Let's go.
Man, every week it seems like the games get bigger and bigger and bigger for the Cowboys, and this is the biggest game of the Cowboys season. Headed to Detroit against a team last year who, if we're being honest, they put belt to tail on the Dallas Cowboys on Jerry Jones's birthday, and he hadn't forgotten about that either. And this game, this now the Cowboys have to kind of run the table to find themselves in a good enough chance to make a playoff run. But if you lose to the Lions this Thursday, that might be the nail that kind of is in your coffin for your playoff chances. So there is no game that is bigger than this one. The Cowboys, Dak Prescott, Brian Schottenheimer and company have come off two of the biggest wins, man, since I've been around here in a long time, beating the Philadelphia Eagles and then knocking off the Kansas City Chiefs on Thanksgiving. This is that one game right now that the Cowboys – I don't know what they have to muster up, what type of motivational speak they have to, but they have to find a way. One more point. That's it. One more point than the Detroit Lions on Thursday night. When the clock strikes 000, the Dallas Cowboys have to figure out one way or another to get one more point than the Detroit Lions, and that now opens up a world of possibilities. You would jump the Detroit Lions in the standings, and now things start looking real good for you with the remaining guys on the schedule, which would be the Vikings, the Chargers, the Washington Commanders, and the New York Football Giants. That gives you a clear pathway to find yourself potentially making the playoffs. That would make you the hottest team in football. You knock off Eagles, Chiefs, Lions, there will be no team hotter than the Dallas Cowboys in the National Football League. Depending on the performance from a guy like Dak Prescott, that can maybe even catapult you back up into the conversation of league MVP. There are so many things that are sitting on the wings of this game for the Cowboys to knock off the Detroit Lions Thursday night. I'm excited for it, man. I've dug into the film. And seeing some of the things that Detroit does now, they do bring some issues, they bring some problems for you. But if the Cowboys can figure out a way to continue playing, all three phases of football pretty good, offense, defense, and special teams, I mean this game is going to come down to the wire, and I'm not saying the Cowboys don't have a chance to win it.
Right, you referenced that game from last season. That was the 47-9 lacking, as you mentioned, on Jerry Jones's birthday. Jared Goff had 3 touchdowns on that day. The Detroit Lions just basically had their way with the Cowboys on their home field. If you're around the year, and just to bring this up, we talked about it in the offseason, starting right off with Jared Goff. We know that he is a former number 1 overall pick. You had him number 4 on your list of top quarterbacks that the Cowboys would face. Looking at that list, if you had to redo it, would he go lower or higher?
I think he'd probably still sit in that same space. I think Jared Goff is a really good quarterback. I think with the weapons that he has and his skill set, I do think he's missing Ben Johnson a little bit in the way that they just finally found that chemistry. He hasn't quite found that with either Johnny Morton or now Coach Campbell now calling the plays. And so, he's lost his tight end. Amon-Ra St. Brown may or may not play in that game. But I think Jared Goff is still in that conversation where he can light you up now. Like if you give Jared Goff enough time, Jared Goff can put some numbers on your head and leave you out there a little lumped up on defense if you let him.
Yeah, we're looking at that. We know that he is standing, especially when it comes time to playing at home. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who you mentioned, he hasn't practiced all week, had that ankle injury that he suffered during Thanksgiving, and it doesn't look good. We know he's a tough cookie when it comes down to it, one of the best in the league, not necessarily having his best year, a lot of drop balls, uncharacteristic of what we come to see from that position. But if he doesn't play, it definitely presents an advantage for the Cowboys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as far as the passing game, because now you're talking about being down Sam Laporta, who's one of the rising tight ends, young tight ends in the National Football League. And then Amon-Ra does so much for this offense, right? Like he's a stud, but he's also one of these guys who in this offense, in the Detroit offense, it's a very timely offense, right? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 balls out, 1, 2, 3 ball is out. And you need guys to be where they're supposed to be when that quarterback gets to the top of his drop. And that's one thing that Amon-Ra is really good at, is being where he's supposed to be, and not just being there, but actually being open when the time for the ball to be thrown, his yak yards after it. And I think one of the things that a lot of people, when you start talking about looking at what makes Amon-Ra such a great player, and this is required amongst all of the receivers in Detroit, is his blocking. You don't get some of these big Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery type runs out of the backfield without wide receivers blocking down the field. And it's easy to have that thing echoed down the chain of command in the receiver room when your number one guy is willing to go in there and dig out a safety and crack back a linebacker or try to set the edge on a defensive end to get the ball outside. So you miss that as well from Amon-Ra, where he is in there in the trenches getting some blocks that will spring some of the big runs that they've had all season long with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. So not only do you miss his pass catching ability, but also that other threat of a guy going inside and laying down a block.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, he, in a sense, if I'm looking at it, I don't like to compare, but this is the business that we're in. He's like a maybe slightly more athletic, maybe a little bit faster Hines Ward, if that kind of makes sense as far as his willingness from the wideout position to get in there and make those plays that are considered, not necessarily some pass catchers. But you mentioned Jahmyr Gibbs, and I look at him, and we talked about Sonic and Knuckles all the time last season, him and Montgomery. This season, it's more shifted towards Gibbs. He switched to number 0. He's playing like an agent 0, and we didn't get to rank running backs in the offseason. But if you had to put him with the rest of the running backs in the NFL, is he top 5? Is he top 3? Is he 1? Where exactly do you place him in the pantheon of running backs in the NFL?
Oh, I mean, like off the top of my head, I'm thinking about running backs, right? And I know that Saquon is having a down year, but I think Saquon is still Saquon, right? Derrick Henry is still Derrick Henry. I love Christian McCaffrey, who has 80 receptions already this year. You can't forget now. This might be the best running back in the game in Bijan Robinson in Atlanta for all that he does, and just his ability is stupid to what he's doing, what he's able to do. So like top 10, I don't know if he gets in the top 5, because I still got Christian McCaffrey, I got Bijan, and that's no particular order, but Christian McCaffrey, Bijan, I'm thinking Saquon, Derrick Henry. I'm missing somebody.
You name certain guys, and you name certain guys twice. So I think it's safe to say he is in the conversation among the best backs. Clearly, he's at least top 5 if we're going to name backs, and we can continue to name off Saquon, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, and running backs of those ilk. He's clearly in that class of running backs.
Yeah, no, without a shadow of a doubt, he's definitely in that class, and he's continuing to grow. Like you're starting to see even more and more of Jahmyr Gibbs learning how to run in between the tackles, run behind his pads. He's really good in the receiving game as well. And then he might be the fastest of the group. Now you're talking about speed. He might be one of these guys. We talk about being one of the fastest running backs in the league, because if he gets an angle, he gets to corner, or he gets up the sideline, beep beep. All you're gonna see is brake lights because you ain't catching him. So for Jahmyr Gibbs, that's going to be one thing that the Cowboys have to really come and tackle, be where you're supposed to be, because Dan Campbell is going to be relying on Jahmyr Gibbs to maybe break out, one of those or two of those 50-plus yard runs, 60-plus yard runs, because, like I said before, he gets in the open field, and not many people catch him once he gets going.
Nah, they're not catching him. Sometimes guys have angles. We just saw him put up 200-plus on the New York Giants. Now, I know the New York Giants aren't the 85 Bears. We get that. However, that speed, it doesn't matter against whatever it is. Ain't nobody catching that dude 9 times out of 10. A deadly threat when it comes to the running game for Detroit.
You're right. Now, I got a chance to talk to their not their wide receiver coach, but their running back coach, who just so happened to be a very good friend of mine and former teammate of mine, Tashard Choice. And one of the things that he's talking about Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And this is a lot of times how coaches think about certain things. He's like, yeah, Jets, man, they're really good runners. He's like, bro, he said, but watch these guys in pass protection. Watch these guys willing to lay out to get the quarterback, a little bit more time. Watch these guys throw a block. And he goes, that's how I always measure my running backs. We want you to run the rock, but will you be willing to do the dirty work when you aren't getting the rock? And he's like, man, these dudes show up to work. They challenge each other. They battle each other. And it just that level of competition breeds excellence. And he said, this is what these two guys go at every day. It's competition, but it's breeding excellence. And every single day they're trying iron sharpen iron. He's like, they're trying to make each other better. He's like, man, these guys are the heartbeat of our offense, because when they get going, everything else for this offense opens up. And I think the Cowboys are going to get a heavy dose of Sonic and Knuckles, especially if Amon-Ra St. Brown can't go in this football game. And I'll even add to this, if Amon-Ra can't go, so now you'll be down Amon-Ra and you'll be down Sam Laporta. Look for Jahmyr Gibbs to be schemed up and designed up to be a pass catcher, where he can find, where the Detroit Lions can find ways to get him one-on-one with linebackers, whether that be Logan Wilson or Kenneth Murray or DeMarvion Overshown. They're going to try to find ways with motions and formations where they can get Jahmyr Gibbs out in space on these different type of pass routes. And then now once he catches it, being able to take angles and run away from guys just to make up for those added yards that they wouldn't get if if Amon-Ra can't go, or Amon-Ra is limited in the game. So Jahmyr Gibbs is definitely going to be something to look forward to, not only in the backfield, but in the passing game.
Game plan definitely will have to be shifted if there's no Amon-Ra St. Brown. It is Believe in Cowboys. Jusby Howley and Roe Parrish, all presented by FanDuel. Shouts out to Tashard. Deucey Smalls in the building. Number 23 for the Cowboys. Balled out, coming out of Georgia Tech back in the day. I'm glad to see his ascend in the coaching ranks. We saw him at Georgia Tech as a coach. We saw him down at UT with the Longhorns. Now he's with Detroit, running backs coach. Looking forward to seeing him getting the opportunity to be a coordinator here in the near future, man. Just a good dude. I know he's probably one of those dudes when you talk about good teammates that you see. Sometimes you shake hands, sometimes you dap up with a hug, and sometimes you tackle them. Something tells me Deucey Smalls is in that latter category for you.
Absolutely, man. One of my best friends, one of my greatest teammates, man. And, man, he showed me so much about the game when I got to the Cowboys, took me in, embraced me, man, and just learned so much from him. He is absolutely one of those dudes. He's a foxhole dude. He's a dude, when you see him, his energy is infectious. And, man, you talk about being a coordinator. I mean, this dude may be a head coach on the collegiate level sooner rather than later. I mean, so he wanted to get some NFL experience in. That's why he left UT and came to Detroit. But this is a guy who I think will be on a lot of head coaches' radar in the next year or so.
Man, you over here spilling the tea, man. You might be telling the listeners and viewers something that they might not know yet. That might be on the horizon. Hey.
Enjoy while you can, Detroit.
Yeah, man. Shout out to T-Choice, man. But now you mentioned it. You talk about the game plan maybe being adjusted with Amon-Ra St. Brown potentially out of the port here. So we shift that to the Dallas Cowboys, because when you talk about this run defense, obviously over the past couple of weeks since the trade deadline, only allowing 69 yards since week 11, which is outstanding. It's among the best in the NFL. So I got to ask you this. The combination of and Williams, is that trio more valuable collectively than Micah Parsons was the Cowboys individually?
I partially say no. And here's why I say no. Because, one, I didn't get the chance to see Kenny, Osa, and Micah together. I saw Osa and Micah together, and I saw Osa get paid because he was able to eat off of Micah being out there. I just value a premier pass rusher on the defensive side more than anything. I think defensively, to me, it goes premier pass rusher, shutdown corner, right? And then, give me a Fred Warner type linebacker, and then I can come to the trenches in the defensive front. That's just how I value the level of a defensive pass rusher. When you have one dude, now mind you, we I know that we have to talk about it. And people don't want us to bring up that name anymore. But over the last couple of weeks, Micah has entered into his own category. He's the only player in NFL history to ever go 5 8 years with 12 sacks or more. No other, not LT, not Reggie, not Michael Strahan, not you, not Ray. Look, find your pass rushers, find your defensive. It doesn't matter. There's no other person in NFL history that can say that they had 5 consecutive years with 12 sacks or more. So I just value that position, me personally, a lot. So I think if you could have had, let's just say, like Micah, Osa, and Kenny Clark, that combination to me would have been the missing piece, because you wouldn't have been able to do what you did in playoff games, like run up the middle all day long and set the run game up, or double team Micah or run at Micah, because there would have been another level player on the inside. Remember, they were calling old dudes off the couch that Rod Marinelli knew, and that Monty Kiffin knew, and they were just trying to. I mean, again, they were still trying to push out Monty Smith to clog the middle up, and teams were like, yeah, good luck with that. He can't have the snap on time. So I would say, while this trio is really good with Kenny Clark and Osa and now Quentin Williams, I just value that. I value a premier pass rusher, man, and what they can do for your defense, and how they can just wreak havoc on a quarterback. And Micah, he does that, man. He does that maybe only Myles Garrett in this league does it better than Micah Parsons.
No, agreed. And we know that whether we're talking about you, Jesse Holley, or general managers in the NFL, the premier positions on the defensive side of the ball is edge rusher, whether that be outside linebacker or defensive end, hybrid, whatever you want to call it, and shutdown corner. That's generally where the most amount of dollars are going to be allocated on the defensive side. So everybody can say what they want. We won the trade. Number one, if you don't play for the Cowboys or work for the Cowboys, stop saying we. Okay, let me just say that. But second of all, edge rusher wins every time. The Cowboys did not win the trade. However, they're looking pretty good, seeing the results and what they were able to get and how they're all playing together right now. But I agree wholeheartedly. Give me number 11 or number 1 any day, whatever you want to call it, on my defense before any other position.
Yeah, I mean, just again, to have that level of ability from the pass rushing position, man, it could. I just value that more.
Nah, no question. The Cowboys, Jesse, Holly, Roe, Parrish, again, presented by FanDuel. A position that we really don't talk a lot about is offensive line, because we generally look at offensive line as a whole. We say O-line, don't really get into the individual positions, but I got to give a slow clap Tyler Booker, because when it comes down to it, number one, we know that the Cowboys, one thing they've done consistently, they drafted and developed the offensive line consistently well over the last decade plus. But Tyler Booker, under circumstances of this year, it's been crazy, obviously. But for all rookie linemen, he's only allowed 1 sack, which is ridiculous. And, he's among the league leaders in everything offensive line in his individual position as far as rookies goes. And he's just been amazing. He's been as advertised. We know where he came from as far as coming from that powerhouse in Alabama. But everything, and it's not, we don't see this all the time when guys get drafted. But everything that we saw in the scouting report, everything that we saw on film for the most part, is pretty much translated to his rookie season with the Cowboys.
No, it has. And you're talking about, never wanting to be the man to replace the man. And,
Right.
Zach Martin was a consistent all-pro at the right guard position for 10 years. I mean, Zach Martin was a guy who, when he ended his career, he had more Pro Bowls and more All-Pros than he had holding penalties. That's insane to be able to have that level of stat go. And then now you add, you come behind that, and there's a standard there, right? There's a very, very, very high standard that people expect from that right guard position. And Tyler Booker has come in as a rookie and admirably have stepped in, and he's had his moments. And then most rookies will have their moments where it's kind of like the game might have been a little tricky or too fast. But for the most part, Tyler Booker has come in, and he has been one of the consistent spots on that offensive line. Whether he, some injuries here and there, and he dealt with some things, but man, he's battled some of the best interior defensive linemen that the league has, and he's faced them this year. And for him not to be, dominated on a consistent basis or embarrassed, or we looked at him and said, man, another first-round pick that we have to wait 3-4 years before he maybe or maybe not get it. He seems like a guy who is a sure fit at that position, and a guy that will look back from this 8, 9, 10 years from now. And he would have been going to 6, 7, 8 Pro Bowls and just be a mainstay at that right guard where Dak and company doesn't have to worry about it. He is as advertised. And I will always go back to the draft when he made the quote. He talked about, I love to play football and I love to see the souls leave people's bodies after I dominate them. And I'm like, that's what I want to hear from my offensive lineman, that he wants to play so well and dominate a player so well that he watches the soul leave the body. And so I will always remember that about Tyler Booker. And every single week, man, you see the improvement of him going out there and playing. And he's going to be, Javonte Williams is playing well. Dak is playing well. The passing game is playing well. All that's because guys like Tyler Booker up front has been able to hold things down when he's been in there, and not be leaky and not be dominated by anybody that he's going up against.
No, he's been, man, being a former running back, I love to see offensive linemen have success, but I like to see the offensive linemen that got not just a little bit of dog in them, but got that wolf in them. And with the statement that he made that you talked about on draft day, like, he definitely has that. And I'm happy for him and all the success that he's had this season, man.
Yeah, he's like I said, he's one of those guys where you start looking at down the road that this, Tyler Guyton, Cooper Beebe, that interior from guard, center to guard, you're pretty much set there for the next 6 to 8 years, as long as those three guys stay healthy. And now what you do outside of left tackle, right tackle, that's another conversation for another day. But you feel really good going forward with your two guards and your center, that can be your interior offensive line looks really good, really promising, really confident. And again, those are building blocks for the future. We talk about windows all the time and how many years do we have in the window to go do this, to go do that. And I look at that portion of this offensive line. I'm saying you're the ability to do anything that you want to do offensively. Run the football, pass the football. Your quarterback will be good. Your quarterback will be protected because of guys like Tyler Booker, Cooper Beebe, and Tyler Guyton. Those three guys on the interior, like I said, they'll be good to go for the next 6 to 8 years.
Great foundational pieces when you talk about the Cowboys running the ball, whether it be blocking for Javonte Williams and company or protecting the highest paid player of all time in NFL history, the long tenure current Dallas Cowboy, Dak Prescott. Of course, there's Believing Cowboys, by the way, Ro Parrish and Jussie Howley, presented by FanDuel. Now, Dak Prescott right now, there was a little bit of talk earlier in the year about him being in the MVP conversation. The record necessarily didn't reflect him being in it. However, since things come around and Dallas is one of the hottest teams in the NFL, according to the odds makers, he's right on the tail end of the top three. So he's back in that MVP conversation. Obviously, like you said, Cowboys, for team purposes, need to win out, must-win game if they want to have some postseason hope. However, Looking at it right now, we're not happy. And anybody listening, thank you for liking, subscribing, and all that. We ain't no homers over here. We don't play that. We don't do none of that homer stuff. And we're no. We call it like we see it. The Cowboys play great. We're gonna tell you they play great. They play like trash. We're gonna tell you they trash. All that said, looking at Dak right now. How realistic do you think his chances are to win MVP this?
Man, I think it's a long shot, just simply because right now, boy, they're not giving the MVP to a team that doesn't make the playoffs. And right now, the way that the Patriots are playing and Drake May is playing, the way Matt Stafford has played this year, and the Rams, and they just lost to the Panthers, have played this year. We're talking about two teams who are, leading in their conference and will probably be either number 1 or number 2 seeds within, their division and conference and stuff like that, and will definitely be going to the playoffs. They're playing some good football. Now, I say all of that to say, you run the table, right? Now you're talking about Thursday night football, right? You're the lone game on football. There's no other game happening Thursday night. You go out to Detroit and you put up one of those games where it's 300, 350, 3 touchdowns, and you win. Then you come back again and you play a team like the Commanders on Christmas. You're one of the only games that'll be playing on that Thursday on Christmas. All eyes on you. You go and you whoop up on the Commanders, and there's another 300+ yard game, 3 touchdowns, and you dog walk those guys, and y'all run the table, and your team makes the playoffs. Everything changes now. Everything changes now. Now you find yourself, even as a wild card, if you do that and you get the Cowboys to 11-5 and 11, yes, 11-5 and 1. Oh, now you're talking about you being definitely in the hunt for that serious consideration of that. Now, if Drake May continues to take his team to those next levels, and they continue, they won 10 in a row or something like that in New England, and he's playing lights out. It's that it comes down to that. So it's going to be them running the table, and then the 2 national games, and I believe they have a Sunday night game too. So there's a couple of games where it's going to be Dak versus national TV. You show up in those type of games, get dubs, ball out, things can get a little bit different. It can get a little different.
Right.
As we sit today, I still think he's 3rd, and it's a distant 3rd. But things can change. Football is very fluid. It's an up and down. It's a what have you done for me lately league. And if he can find some way to get this team to the playoffs, and he continues, because he's going to finish this year, I believe, breaking a bunch of his own personal records, right? Like just, touchdown passes probably and yards. And he's already become, within the season, the all-time leading passer for the Cowboys. And again, you have the emergence of George Pickens. You're probably going to end the year with 2,000-yard receivers, one maybe having somewhere between 1,400 and 1,500, the other maybe having somewhere around 1,100, 1,200. You're going to finish it with 1,000-yard back, right? And Javonte Williams, he's 45 yards from having 1,000 yards, I believe, for the first time in his career. You think about all those things. If you can find a way to run the table and get this team to the playoffs, Dak will definitely be in very high consideration for the MVP.
Dak right now is in control of his own destiny. You did mention those nationally televised games. Going back to the trade deadline, the Cowboys finished with 7 of the last 9 games, either on prime time or as the focus of the game of the week. So all the eyes have been on Dak. And for the most part, he's answered the bell. We know when it comes to MVP, for the most part, they look at wins and they look at stats. However, that narrative is there. So if you have the highest paid player on a team that traditionally has choked and figured out ways how to lose the game, but you have the longest tenured, highest paid player balling out, and the storylines are there, not to mention all of the tragedy that's happened in Dallas. If they continue to win out, and then, of course, these are big ifs, but the Cowboys continue to win out and Dak continue to play like he's playing, you can't tell me he's not going to be right there, 1 or 2, when it comes down to MVP. That's just what I'm looking at because, again, narratives matter, cause matter, and whether you talk about, of course, Arizona was a stinker, but you go to Las Vegas, Philadelphia game of the week, Kansas City, front of everybody on Thanksgiving. Detroit, that is Thursday night football. You got Minnesota on Sunday night. Los Angeles, put that to the side. But then you have Washington as the only game on Christmas Day. All these eyeballs are going to be on Dak. And again, it is his MVP to lose. Although the odds don't say it right now, to me, it is his MVP to lose.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you right there. You got to show up in those games, especially because when everybody's watching, that those primetime games matter. Those are swaying games because nobody's like trying to just peeking in and watching the other games, and they got 7-8 games going on. No, that the sole focus is you. And if everybody's watching and you're out there dealing, and I mean, just got that ball all over the park, and your team is winning, your offense is going. But winning those primetime games, and I know you said, we'll put Los Angeles to the side. You can't have a stinker against the Chargers, right? Like you can't go with the Chargers and all of a sudden now you throw 2 picks and you eke one out because you had 179 yards and 1 touchdown, 2. You can't have that stinker, right? Like everything from here on out has to be damn near dominant. Like you have to present yourself as the best player in the National Football League. So having a stinker against the Vikings or against the Chargers would not bode well for your MVP race, right? Like, yes, you win the primetime games, but they're watching those stinkers too if you have one. So you have to be dominant from this point on. And for the last 3 weeks, dating back to the Raiders, the Eagles, the Chiefs, Dak Prescott has been as impressive, as good as any other quarterback in the league. And again, it's this Thursday night on Prime Thursday Night Football. This is going to have to be one of those games. Let me say this: you don't win this game. I'm just flat out. You don't win this game unless Dak plays spectacular. I just don't think so. I think now what is spectacular? He's going to have to make bona fide plays, whether that's somewhere where he's scrambling, do it. He's going to have to make bona fide plays, throws, timings, all that stuff matters. He's going to have to be able to do that in order to win this particular game this weekend, this Thursday.
Yeah, looking at everything, we know that we talked about it earlier. Detroit is having some injury issues. This is something that's not foreign to this Detroit team. It seems like everybody and their mama was Detroit last season. Not the same thing this year, but they still have some injuries. Of course, we mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now it looks like DB Terrion Arnold's not going to be playing in the game. He hasn't been practicing. So a lot of advantages out there. CeeDee Lamb, who again, him and his hands are now back getting along. They're back on the same page. And we already know what GP3 is going to do when he steps out on that field. And one thing that I saw, of course, we talked about it. Hard Knocks NFC East is available for anybody that loves the Cowboys and can't get enough. That's where they cover all 4 teams in the division. Jameis Winston sent Dak Prescott a text, and they went back and forth. And at the time, from what I saw, Dak didn't know that Jameis caught a pass, but they showed some throwback footage of those two together at the Peyton Manning football camp in the day. And it was crazy seeing how much how much those two have aged and grown, matured. And obviously back then, it was 2 totally different things. Because Jameis was, highly touted and ended up going up and winning the Heisman. Dak was a great college player, still not a Heisman winner, but the careers have gone. Your reaction just seeing that clip on Hard Knocks?
No, I saw the clip and it was funny to me because even Dak sounded surprised. He was like, "Yeah, man, I got a text from Jameis." He's like, man, such a good dude. But I just showed you, Jameis is just one of those unicorn type individuals, man. And you just never. He's like, man, I'm sure he didn't expect to get a text from Jameis Winston about him, passing the all-time yardage record for the Cowboys in Cowboys history. But that's the brotherhood of the game, right? Like that's the brotherhood, and that's the thing that sometimes people miss. Is that most people probably didn't know that Dak and Jameis was roommates at the passing academy for Peyton Manning, but those relationships, man, they continue on so much further than that. But that's the brotherhood that happens in the National Football League when guys just you come across one another and you just stay in touch over time. And look how the careers have gone. Jameis, of course, Heisman Trophy winner. super high draft pick. Dak Prescott, a 4th-round pick, a backup, trying to find his way. One guy had the world in his hand, and now it's gone, to one where Jameis is a backup, and now Dak Prescott over the last 10 years has become the all-time leading passer in Cowboys history. He's going to go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the Dallas Cowboys, which says a lot when you think about the names that have come through here, like Staubach, like Tony Romo, like Troy Aikman, Danny White. I mean, the list, you could name the list. And Jameis is now having to back up Jackson Dart. So it's funny how paths can go, but it was pretty cool to see, and that's that little insight. You just know that, man, these relationships go far beyond the football field.
No question about it, man. It is Believe in Cowboys. Ro Parrish and Jesse Alley. It is about FanDuel, keeping the subject with quarterback play. On Thanksgiving Day, we saw a previously struggling quarterback in Jordan Love, who's had his ups and downs this season, more downs than up as of late, but he walked into Detroit on Thanksgiving Day and carved them jokers up just like somebody carves up that good old fried turkey on Thanksgiving. Now, saw the success that Jordan Love had. Seeing that, is that a precursor? Do we see Dak Prescott having the same success that a Jordan Love had against this Detroit defense?
If the Detroit defense played like that, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I'm highlighting, because the Detroit defense hasn't been what it's been in the past. Now, whether that's injuries, whether that's Aaron Glenn moving on and going to be the head coach of the New York Jets, they've had that turnover both for offense and defensive coordinator. Remember, Ben Johnson, head coach of the Chicago Bears, was their offensive coordinator last year. Aaron Glenn, head coach of the New York Jets, defensive coordinator last year. And so now they're going through that transition. The biggest problem is they're not getting to the quarterback. And if Detroit, I don't know what the hell they've been watching the last couple of weeks, but if they have not been watching the fact that, George Pickens is running the hell out of these slants, and I like the fact. Let me add this little tidbit here. I love the fact. Sometimes I just love the fact that it's not going to just pat myself on the back. You know what I'm saying? Because I've been on this whole slant narrative for the last month. And now all of a sudden it's national news. Everybody talking about, I'm like, I've been saying this for the last damn month. So sometimes if you just listen right here, Believe in the Cowboys, Ro Parrish, Jesse Holly, you're going to get the goods. Sometimes I just be early with stuff because I'll be having the foresight and y'all just don't catch on early enough. I've been talking about George Pickens running these damn slants for 5 weeks, for a month, okay? And now it's national news. Randy Moss is talking about it. They're asking George Pickens in the media. They're highlighting on the Sunday shows. Listen. Like, subscribe, hit the notification button, because you need to be right here. This is what it all started at. I was the one talking about this 4 weeks. Anyway, if you watch the way the Detroit line, a lot of single high safety, they do some man, they do some 3-match, they do some cover 2. They do a bunch of different things. The big issue is they're not getting to the quarterback. Over the last 2 weeks, the Detroit Lions defense have given up 600 yards and 7 touchdowns in the passing game. They only have 4 sacks over the last 4 games. Aiden Hutchins has 1.5 sacks over the last 4 games. So the guys who you're expecting to get to the quarterback, to disrupt the quarterback's timing, to get him off his spot, they're not doing it. Aleem McNeil, he's a tough interior defensive lineman. He's not getting there. A bunch of the guys are just not getting there. And now you put your corners on an island. And I don't give a damn if you have primetime Deion Sanders out there. He can't cover for 6 seconds. He can't cover for 5 seconds. There you go. Like that, when you put your corners on an island and they have to cover for 5-6 seconds because you can't get to the quarterback, you're setting them up to fail. And that's what has happened for the Detroit Lions is they haven't been able to get to the quarterback. So if they think that they're going to be able to line up and play that single high with these 2 menaces that we have in 88 and 3, George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, they're going to be in for a very long day because Dak Prescott is efficient, he's effective, he is getting that ball out at a rate so quick, so fast, man. He is in such control of this offense. Detroit will have to scheme something up because you're not going to be able to stand out there and just play those guys one-on-one all day.
Aiden Hutchinson, you mentioned him. Now, anybody that follows the Dallas Cowboys, remember he had that gruesome leg injury in that blowout victory at Cowboys State, AT&T Stadium, over a year ago. Now, I don't know how in depth you've gone on watching Detroit film, or has that recovery from that leg injury, has that hampered him as a player, or is it more scheming and offensive coordinator scheming towards him, preventing him from making plays? What have you seen watching a guy that we've seen get to the quarterback in the past and been a menace on defense? What have you seen from him since he's come back from that injury?
Yeah, I mean, the injury doesn't seem like it's hampering him. Again, I just think the way that they've schemed things up, and maybe they're learning this new Kelvin Shepard is their defensive coordinator, just the new transition of learning his defense. And again, when you're doing a lot of man coverage in the back end, if the opposing offense's team receivers are getting open, you just don't have time to get there. And that's what's happening. They're just the receivers are getting open so fast because they've had injuries on the back end. You mentioned Terrion Arnold. He's been put on IR, so he'll be out. Not having those corner play being where it's supposed to be, people don't realize just how much that second, that defense end is coming around the corner. If that DB could just hold up for another second, Aiden would get a sack. He'd get a strip. And he's been close. It's not like Douglas is dominating him. He just hasn't gotten there in enough time because they're playing single coverage on the back end and the cornerbacks aren't holding up. We talked about it many times on this show, how the rush is tied to the coverage and the coverage is tied to the rush. If one is doing well, the other will succeed. If the coverage ain't doing well, it's going to be tough for you to get a rush up front. So you can't have one without the other. And they just haven't been able to get to the quarterback.
And it goes back to what we were saying earlier about the premium positions on the defensive side. We know it's edge rusher. We know that it's cornerback. That's how we do, because we could construct a team if we needed to. I think we could do some stuff. You be the general manager, I'll just be the assistant GM, and we can put some things together and make it happen. I'm like, for real.
Sure. I got a good eye for talent. I got a good eye for talent. I can put something together. I for sure can do that.
No question. Hey, it's Jussie Holly, Roe Paris, Believe It Cowboys, presented by FanDuel. Looking at what Vegas has to say right now, it's 3.5. That line keeps on getting shorter and shorter, which pretty much, if anybody knows anything about the odds, it's pretty much saying that it's even, or the Cowboys might even have an advantage that number is so low for the home team. All that being said, what do you see this game playing out? Who do you think has the edge? Who wins?
Man, the Cowboys have won some really good games. The last 2 games at home against 2 really good opponents. Now they gotta pack it. They gotta pack all that up, put it in the go yard, put it in the Toomey, put it in the Louis, put it in the Gucci, put it in whatever luggage you decide that you're gonna bring. Make sure it get through TSA because you have to take that on the road. You got to go to Detroit. It's going to be a hostile crowd in Detroit. They're going to be lit in that dome in Detroit. Dan Campbell doesn't like you for whatever reason. I don't know who pissed Dan Campbell off in the Cowboys front office or whatever for many years ago, possibly. But Dan Campbell wants to embarrass you. The Cowboys also have to, most of the time, a defensive player is thinking, 3 downs. I get off the field on 4th down. Not against Dan Campbell. You got to think 4 downs because he's going for it. If it's anywhere near close to being a 1st down, Dan Campbell is going for it. So if you think about that, that adds about 6 to 8 to maybe 10 more plays onto a defense at the end of the game because you're not getting off the field on 3rd down because they're going for it on 4th down. You have to be able to withstand those things. I think the Cowboys are playing at a high rate right now, man. And I want to see them take it on the road. I want this thing to get interesting. I want this thing to be good for business as well. You know what I'm talking about? I want the thing to be good for business as well. And I think winning this game in Detroit makes it good for business. It makes it good for talking points. It makes it good in DFW. So I got the Cowboys on the road against the Detroit Lions, eking one out, 27-24. Cowboys win 3 in a row, and things get very, very interesting for the Dallas Cowboys, and we get to have fun talking about football for another week.
Yeah, we do. Things will get interesting if the Cowboys come out with a win. I don't know what happened with Dan Campbell. He was a part of that regime that came and built ourselves was with the Cowboys. I don't know what happened, but what I understand did not end well. He ended up exiting, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day. What I know is Dan Campbell's a good dude. When I was working for the team, he was good to me. He was pleasant. He was good people. From what I understand, he's a great teammate as well. And from what I see with the current now, players love him. He's classified as a player's coach and got nothing but love for Dan Campbell. And I hate to say this, but I think he might get his revenge, dog. And it's not even revenge because we know that the Lions, for the most part, they've had a ton of success against the Cowboys. Something just tells me, dog, because everybody's saying the Cowboys this, the Cowboys that, and we got these wide receivers and Detroit's banged up. I just don't think this is a good situation. I think it's going to be one of those tricky Thursday night games where, you know, the ball bounces the wrong way and, you know, a fourth down goes right. I just don't have a good feeling for the Cowboys in this game for some reason.
And I'll also tell you, this game will be without Tyler Guyton, and it'll probably be without Jadeveon Clowney, dealing with a hamstring injury. He hadn't practiced all week. So Jadeveon Clowney, for sure, Tyler Guyton, Jadeveon Clowney may not play in this game. Will be a very, 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 very tight game time decision. And you may or may not get Trayvon Diggs back this game. Don't know if that matters. Don't know if it'll be a factor. Don't know any of that. He's pushing to try to play, but don't know how that'll work out in the end for the Cowboys. But those are just some of the logistics when it comes to roster and people that'll be playing.
Diggs, that is a blast from the past. We haven't heard that name in some time. Have they addressed what concussion that took place? Has anybody they touched on that?
No. All they say is that it's an in-home accident. I may or may not know more, but you know, I won't put that out there on the deal.
Hey, you don't need to. We'll leave it at that. If Jadeveon Clowney doesn't play, that would be a huge disadvantage because we know how he's come in and he's had a huge impact. I don't think a lot of people thought he had a lot left in the tank, but his presence on the field with the plays that he's made and off the field, he's been amazing. So that would be a huge blow to the Cowboys defense if he's not available Thursday night.
Yeah, absolutely. And to the rotation, because the guys that have to come in behind them, they go from having sparing reps to now having starting reps. And that kind of just wears everyone else down in that area. So that'll probably fall in the lap of Dante Fowler / Sam Williams will kind of be getting those additional reps if Jadeveon can't go.
No question about it, man. Hey, either way, I can't wait to see a game Thursday night football. Some say the Dallas Cowboys are the scariest team in the NFL and will be a tough out if they get in the playoffs. However, they got to get to the playoffs first, and it starts with beating the Lions Thursday night. Well, that's a wrap for us. Jesse, you know how we do. Lead it with some good words before we get out of here.
Man, always and always, always, man, be the blessing that you want to see in the world. And always remember, in order to get a blessing, you got to be a blessing. Eliminate the contingencies.
Hey, he said it. Love, respect, and salute.